Welcome back to CBS News New York, where we're gathering some final thoughts, at least for this hour, from Basil Smikle, Javier Lacayo, and Robert George, our political panel. I got to ask, guys, we just got cut off a little while ago. We were talking about when we went to L.A. Bauman and Molly Tucker's headquarters. But Jennifer McLogan had talked about what she sensed as a lack of enthusiasm, at least that's what she was hearing from the campaign, a lack of enthusiasm among younger voters. Do you guys have any sense here right now that maybe perhaps because of the negativity of the races we've seen, that younger voters may or may not be turned on or turned off? What do you think? Anybody?
Well, I'd say younger voters are always very difficult to get out in every election. Midterms are no different. We're not, in 2008 we saw something that we had never really seen before, at least in a generation, where you had young voters taking their parents and grandparents to go vote, and that was an Obama race, right? My point is that there's a substantial shift since then. Somebody like Obama is not on the ballot, and even though Joe Biden has come through with some relief for student loan debt, there are a lot of voters, and particularly young voters, that still really don't see him as a strong leader, unfortunately. And so it is become really difficult, particularly when you don't have a lot of young people on the ballot. I can't stress how important it is for a voter to see themselves in a candidate.
And look at the seniority of this nation right now. The president, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and so on and so on.
Gerontocracy, I believe.
Yeah, that would be the word. And you would say, oh, wow, I can understand why perhaps younger people would feel that way. And also, look at generations. We have, at least I remember my generation coming out of the Watergate era. Everything was very depressing, sad. The economy was awful. This generation has gone through, 9/11. Then they come out, the 2008 economic downturn. Someone who's about 30 years old has not exactly had a lot of uplift, and that might reflect, yes, we did have that exception when you saw a candidate like Barack Obama, but that's such a rare exception.
And Dick, we're really kind of in the beginning, right, of seeing a new generation of young voters sort of come into their political power. I think tonight we got our first Gen Z member of Congress elected out of Florida.
Florida, 25 years old.
Ironically enough, from Florida.
Yeah,
yeah, of all places, right.
But, look, the Gen Z is very different from even just the millennials that came right before them, right? This is a generation that basically came to political age during the Trump era, right? That gets a majority of their news from TikTok.
Yeah,
right?
I've got one at home. I know her, very well, yeah.
Another group, though, to look at nationwide, where I think there's going to be a lot of attention, is Latino voters, right? Yeah. Latino voters are an incredibly young and growing demographic. They are starting to lean a little bit more Republican in certain key battleground parts of the states. And what I think we're really seeing is that they are truly not a monolith, right?
That is true, and we've seen that on a national level. We saw some of the races in Texas, but you're talking about New York State.
Sure.
And what parts of New York State, and why do you think that is?
Well, I just saying generally, the Latino voters are, a lot of times focused, politicians like to talk to Latinos about things like DACA and immigration, right?
Right.
And what I think all of the polling is showing, including, the large Latino population that we have here in New York, right, is that these are voters that are focused primarily on inflation. They're focused on issues of the economy and rising costs of living. There's been a lot of national polling, including Latinos in New York, that actually has shown that abortion, right, has really jumped to the top of priorities for these groups of voters, driven largely by Latinas and Democratic Latino voters. So I think there's going to be a lot to keep an eye on there.
Yeah, but so far, at least from the early results, it doesn't seem like abortion had actually, increased the percentage of younger voters. It may have, on the margins, increased, women voters and so forth. However, just looking again, where there's so many results still coming in, Democrats, I think, maybe not so much optimistic. I mean, the Republicans are still going to take the House, but it doesn't seem like the type of wave we saw in 2010 on the Republican side or 2018 on the Democratic side in terms of the House. In fact, Democrats may have even picked up a Republican seat in Ohio, and there's some others out there. So we're going to be going in well into the night and into the next couple of days to find out how big it is, particularly on the Senate side. But so far, it doesn't seem like an overwhelming kind of an election. Some strong Republican wins here and there, but not a complete sweep.
All right, and if we could just take a quick look at the panel on the governor's race right now between Lee Zeldin. All right, we got 41% of the vote, 61 to 39. Shall we say that's not insignificant, gentlemen? Basil, perhaps you. I mean, we're getting closer to the point where it's not insignificant.
Yes, I think we're in a territory where I can say that I feel strongly that Kathy Hochul can pull this out.
Because otherwise, you'd have to flip completely around for the second phase, but that's still not clear.
We don't know which suburbs have come in yet.
That's true.
We don't know.
That's
There's a
true.
lot we don't know. There's a lot
But what do we have? About
but
40% of the vote comes from downstate, correct? That's about right. City and its suburbs, yeah?
Yes.
42%,
yes.
I think?
And all of Lee Zeldin's vote is really going to come from everything above Rockland County, let's say, and in Long Island. But they're just not that many,
right?
Because you have the density downstate. So having said that, look, I feel comfortable that she's gonna be able to pull this out. But owing to both points, I think one of the things that elected officials, and particularly the parties, are understanding more so than they have in recent elections, is that these voting constituencies are not monolithic. Lee Zeldin campaigned with Latino clergy over the weekend to make his closing out. African Americans care about crime too, and there's a conversation
Absolutely.
that you can have with that community as well.
And in the 30 seconds, which is about what we have, Javier, you get the last word here.
The last word. Look, I think that tonight, after a lot of hand-wringing by Democrats, it's not going to end up being that bad of a night for Democrats in New York or nationally. Yeah. We may lose a couple of seats here in the state, but I think on the whole, they have stopped the bleeding.
Okay, Basil, Smikle, Javier Lacayo, Robert George. Robert, you hold that thought. We'll be back in about 20 minutes. You could talk some more.